Facebook ban on news. Well, Mark Zuckerberg publicly stated in the past he doesn't think it's right for a private company to censor news. Here he was back in 2019.
Now, I know many people disagree with this, but in general, I don't think it's right for a private company to censor politicians or the news in a democracy.
Rights Watch, an international organisation that conducts research and advocacy on human rights, says Mark Zuckerberg had it right then and not now. They say this is an alarming and dangerous turn of events. Joining me is the Australia Director at the Human Rights Watch, Elaine Pearson. Elaine, thanks so much for your time. And as you rightly point out in a statement you made earlier today, this is not just about news sites, is it? They've shut down various other sites, from disability services to health services.
Well, that's right. I mean, I think it's really quite unprecedented to see in the dead of night a whole lot of access to vital information essentially being cut off. Fire services, politicians' pages in the midst of, an election campaign, health services, and even Human Rights Watch's Australia own page has been affected. So, this is not simply about the news, but this is really a move that is straight out of the authoritarian playbook. I mean, it's limiting and censoring the free flow of information, and that's a very dangerous step for a company to take.
Elaine, have you seen from Facebook itself signs of this sort of behaviour, looming? Because we've seen them say, look, we can't deal with misinformation at various times. They've found it difficult to do that, and yet they've been able to get rid of a whole heap of credible sites in one fell swoop.
Well, exactly. I mean, and it's a very dangerous time to be doing that at a time when misinformation, is spreading about coronavirus. We're in the midst of a pandemic, and yet we're finding that actually it's the credible sources that people should be turning to, which are the ones that are right now being blocked. It's a very sort of sudden, drastic step for Facebook to take this step. And this is not necessarily for us to make criticisms about the law that has come into place, but we would say that Facebook really has a responsibility to immediately restore all of these services, because these are basic services that people have come to rely on. And instead, I think the risk is that, Australians will potentially start to leave the site in droves if they can't get access to reliable, credible information on there.
Yeah, and as you say, it's become something that's second nature, that people rely on, and yet it's been a wake-up call, hasn't it, in terms of just how widespread, how ubiquitous this organisation and its service is.
Well, I think it has. And look, I think Facebook has faced a lot of challenges in other countries because of, the spread of misinformation or the incitement to violence in countries like Myanmar, where, rumours and hate speech have really spread like wildfire. And the company has introduced steps to address some of those issues. But here we have a very different type of situation where Facebook is basically showing how powerful it is in being able to hit the kill switch. And, this is a platform that people rely on, and it's really not acceptable, I think, in a democratic country, for a private company to be taking, such a drastic step in reducing people's access to information.
It's interesting, we've seen Australia at the vanguard of the push back against China and its assertive and very tough foreign policy, and now a giant of a different sort. Again, Australia is at the front line, so to speak, Elaine, when it comes to its behaviour and trying to put some guardrails in place.
Well, I think that's it. And I mean, I think that's probably what is driving, this decision is, Facebook is concerned that if, this happens in Australia and, if it's forced to reckon with the media companies in this way, then it will also, it's very likely that other countries will follow suit. But ultimately, this type of negotiation tactic, it's extremely blunt, and it's having a huge impact on Australians all across the country. And, it could have very dangerous implications if people don't have access to health information or to fire information. You know, we're still in the middle of summer, and the WA Rural Fire Service site was affected. And so, you know, I think it is time for the company, you know, certainly to examine the impact of its behaviour, to, you know, immediately reinstate these sites, and to, you know, negotiate in good faith to have, you know, a fair deal ultimately with media companies, and to comply with the law.
Elaine Pearson, Australia Director at the Human Rights Watch. Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Kieran.